Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Hope you're doing really, really well on this Monday. It was a great weekend. It's always a good weekend when Chelsea win, but an even better weekend when we beat Spurs, as we usually do. As I like to do on these Monday shows, whilst we're kind of reflecting and getting ready to think about the next game, which of course is Karabag in the Champions League. We'll be doing our preview for that game on Tuesday. I'd like to take a deep breath, reflect and look at some of the positives or negatives, tactical trends from the previous weekend. And that's what we're doing in this game. Two major things to speak about from the Spurs game, and that is Chelsea's brilliant pressing, effective man-to-man marking system, and how it was so effective of not only suffocating Spurs, but very much directly leading to Chelsea winning the game, but also the improvement on set pieces and something Maresca did that maybe is a sign of where the Premier League is going to head next from some clubs and coaches in response to the set piece kind of trend we've seen this season. Please smash that like button, get involved down in the comments, share, subscribe, get involved in the Son of Chelsea community, whether you are listening on the podcast feed or watching on YouTube. So, start off here, I think mainly man-to-man marking and Chelsea, especially pressing in the opposition half. It is a little bit of a blessing when Chelsea are able to do this more dominantly and more obviously during a game, because they don't get many game states like this. And I'm very intrigued to see how Chelsea operate at home against Arsenal at the end of this month, and how Maresca is going to use it, because I'm quite confident, and we've seen it a number of times, this season, but also, you think back to the PSG game multiple times in the Club World Cup, and even sometimes at the end of last season when Chelsea started to click into gear a little bit, and especially in bigger games start to really show a lot more conviction and I think tactical kind of superiority of when they're able to have less of the ball, to act as the counter-puncher, which I think is kind of in Chelsea's DNA historically anyway, but especially under Maresca, they look a different beast, really. They look a team that is ferocious, I think is probably one of the best in that aspects, and compared to the slow, methodical, trying to break down a low block, again, it's a game state they don't get to kind of enjoy and very much flourish in that often, but when they can in these bigger games, I think Maresca has shown he's a very, very good tactician to be able to set up not only the right structure, but I think the right profiles. The way Chelsea suffocated Spurs was quite obvious, and although Spurs were kind of enemies to themselves, really, I think some of their decision making and their quality on the ball was really, really lacking some very basic things. Chelsea forced Spurs into those errors at times because of how difficult they made it to find space, to find obvious ways to build up. And there are a few, I think, screenshots that very much demonstrate this in the first half. And again, if you're listening on the podcast feed, definitely suggest go over to the YouTube channel so you can see these as we're explaining through them. The ball comes back to Vicario around 23 minutes into the game. And this was kind of a general shape throughout the game for Chelsea. At least 4, 5, 6 Chelsea players inside the Spurs half. Man-to-man marking. So you've got Garnacho on the left, pressing Pedro Porro. You've got Danso very much being occupied by Joao Pedro. Pedro Neto on Van de Ven. And then we see a wider shot here. We've also got Enzo Fernandez in shot as well. Reece James very much going touch tight on, I think that's Rodrigo Bentancur, sort of dropping back to try and receive the ball. And also, of course, Malo Gusto up there at times. And I think this was another thing of how great the PSG performance was in that first half, where you'd see Trev Chalobah, Wesley Fofana. You need really mobile centre-backs and confident centre-backs, and try and win the ball as well to keep that press on. And this was also just a great example of Chelsea suffocating Spurs, limiting their options, and then completely cutting out the danger, where eventually the ball gets played from Jed Spence, trying to go down the left with Xavi Simons, who had a poor game, and Malo Gusto alert, getting in, cutting off any danger, and of course the play restarts again. And it very much led to Chelsea's opening goal, where again, Spurs trying to build up in their own half. They don't feel comfortable. They don't feel confident. The players are not making the right decisions, and Chelsea smelling blood. And I think you see also here of the just the inhuman nature of Moises Caicedo. The first screenshot I have is Caicedo is just watching the ball from a little bit of a distance, really. But the next screenshot, he's literally right on the heels, winning the ball. Chelsea win back possession. Pedro Neto unfortunately doesn't make the right pass, and really this is as much a demonstration of Chelsea's good pressing in the first half, intense pressing, forcing Spurs to make a number of stupid mistakes that, cost them in this game, but also just the ridiculous nature of Caicedo, who chases after not one, not two, but 3 balls and eventually wins it from Van de Ven, who gets a really poor pass back by Xavi Simons, and we know he eventually sets up Joao Pedro for what would turn out to be the winning goal. The man-to-man system, I'm always a little bit sceptical of. I remember, right at the start of Maresca's time at Chelsea in pre-season, his first pre-season, he tried it and it didn't really work. I think at times as well, you are dealing with the profiles you have at your disposal, and maybe that's why it wasn't working as well. You need, obviously, very, very mobile, energetic and hungry players. You also need smart pressers. It's not just about having headless chickens up there. It's about having players, and I think Chelsea do possess a couple of these players. We have in recent years as well. I think Cole Palmer's a very, very intelligent presser, and I think now we have Joao Pedro as well. He is also a very intelligent presser. And it's not just about players who can, cover a lot of ground, which obviously you need. It's also, if you watch Chelsea in this game, there are sometimes players who are occupying more than one player at a time, or at least kind of slyly keeping an eye on another area of the pitch where if there's a loose ball, I can make that ground up and I can win possession back. So on multiple fronts, I thought Chelsea were very, very effective in this game state. I think that over a broader spectrum, a longer term thing, are you going to be able to do this kind of man v man thing against Wolves, against Burnley? Probably not, because naturally those opponents are not going to play in the same way. They are not looking to build up from deep, so they are going to drop a lot deeper, and that still is kind of the big question for Chelsea, is when that game state's different, how they try and find a way to play with as much conviction. But I have a lot of confidence when Chelsea come up against teams like this, they're able to press them high. We've seen it against a number of teams now, and it has proven to be very, very effective. So full marks on that. The other positive thing is, of course, the set-piece improvement, which was a major, major concern going into this game. I mean, it's a major concern kind of going into any game at the moment for a number of Premier League teams, because it has been such a dominant talking point of the Premier League so far this season. Chelsea were horrendous from set pieces in their previous two games. We conceded the long throw to Sunderland in really cheap fashion. We've conceded a long throw to Brentford earlier in the season, and the nature of some of the goals we conceded in quite direct manners against Wolves were also very, very concerning. This game, Chelsea were just a lot better, and I think, Fofana was very dominant. I thought Chalobah had one of his best games for a while, and also Rob Sanchez, who's miles better than Jorgensen. I thought it was probably one of the most dominant box games aerially for Robert Sanchez. He commanded that box, and it felt like it was something that Chelsea were very, very, and I think Sanchez has even said in some quotes after, they were very much working on it, and he used his height, his physicality, his presence to claim a lot of long passes. It wasn't just, long throws or corners. He was very dominant, coming off his line, trying to win the ball back, and very much killing any danger, which is great to see. I mean, I remember years back when Courtois, dare I say his name, he was brilliant at that. And when you have a goalkeeper who's able to come off his line at set pieces and bravely and very effectively win that ball, it just alleviates so much pressure. And that's, unfortunately, from a goalkeeping point of view, we haven't had that assurance for a long period of time. But also, I think what was very notable in the first half was what Maresca decided to do with some of his other players. So we'd have sufficient cover inside and around the box for that throw, but we also would move 3 players forward in the first half. And the screenshot I'm showing, I'm sure all of you, because they made a massive deal of it on TV, so maybe if you were at the game, you had to come back and watch it after, or maybe you noticed it if you were at the game as well. Garnacho, Joao Pedro and Malo Gusto moved forward. And what I like about this, it's kind of a very basic but obvious thing I talk about a lot with tactical problems that teams have. And an analyst I really respect and I've been watching for a number of years. I remember he brought it up, from Tifo, Alex Stewart. Football is all about kind of the opposition, very much being asked questions by the opposition that they have to answer. It's also about posing questions to the opposition that they have to answer as well. And it's some of the things that frustrates me at times about Chelsea, where I feel like we've missed opportunities because we're not asking enough questions to the opposition that then they have to react to, or just ignore, and potentially Chelsea exposed them, which nearly happened here. Bringing those 3 players forward because we knew the obvious threat and the way Spurs were going to try and score against Chelsea, because it's kind of the only way they've been scoring at the moment, because from open play they've really been struggling to create under Thomas Frank. What this does is it forces Spurs to react. They have to retreat. They have to take 3 players out, and those 3 players may not be players who are going to win a header, but they may be 3 players who could win a second ball. We saw that against Sunderland, where a ball dropped right to the edge of the box, and Bertrand Traore was there. So then that limits kind of some of the threat from Spurs. They kind of have to win at least the first or second ball quite quickly if Rob Sanchez isn't winning it. They can't rely on as many bodies being at the edge of the box to receive a loose ball to maybe take a shot or keep the move alive. Instead, what they have to do is get those players retreating, Xavi Simons, Jed Spence. I think Pedro Porro is the other one here who's starting to retreat, because if they don't do that, there's a counter-attacking opportunity, and all three of those Chelsea players behind the halfway line are going to be onside if Rob Sanchez gets his clearance right. And Chelsea almost created a brilliant counter-attacking opportunity from the first time they did it, because Rob Sanchez wins the ball, he plays it to Neto, who finds Enzo Fernandez, and unfortunately I thought Enzo Fernandez had a good game here. His pass out wide to Malo Gusto was simply not good enough, and the move kind of broke down. Chelsea did it again in the second half, and I ponder whether this is a reaction to the set piece kind of dominance we're seeing in the Premier League this year. And you do kind of ponder if, because football moves so fast now and there's so much data, there's so much tactical analysis that's going on at the highest level of the game, how quickly things move on, how quickly things are counteracted and responded to. I do wonder, not just for Maresca, but for other coaches as well, they will start to do this. And this is the way, if you're annoyed about the state of the current Premier League and how dominant and how much time is being given to long throws, this will counteract that. Because teams will start to think, do we really want a situation where a team like Chelsea, who possess speed on the break, or any team really, have those three players, and there is a chance that, it's not a guarantee from a set piece you're going to score. The odds are still kind of against you. Do we really want an opportunity? If you're a lower team in the Premier League coming up against Chelsea, if you're away from home at Stamford Bridge, and we start pushing three players forward, do you really want to take that risk? If you're trying to keep a clean sheet, trying to walk away from Stamford Bridge for a point. So I think that's going to be fascinating, and I think for Maresca it obviously worked in that nature as well. Just because this didn't directly lead to more goals for Chelsea, I do think it was notable, and obviously just the basics of defending from Chelsea. I thought Wesley Fofana as well had one of his best performances in a long period of time. He was very dominant aerially as well. So it's not just the profile players you have in there, it's just kind of the basics that Chelsea were also doing wrong, which we spoke about last weekend. So that is a positive. So that is it. Those are the two things I really wanted to pick out. In the comments below, please do interact, get me your thoughts on the game, and we will be back tomorrow to preview the next Champions League game against Karabag. So stay tuned for that. Like, subscribe, follow across the socials at SonOfChelsea. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you again very soon.